There is a pattern emerging at Arsenal that cannot be ignored any longer, and it may end up defining this entire season if it is not addressed immediately. You know what is more dangerous than outright failure? It is the illusion of progress while quietly standing still. Arsenal's goalless draw away at Nottingham Forest was not just another frustrating result, it was a warning sign. Arsenal dominated the ball, controlled territory, and limited Forest to 0 shots on target, yet still walked away without a win. What makes this even more painful is the timing. Manchester City had just lost, the kind of rare slip that can swing a title race, and the door was wide open for Arsenal to take a commanding step forward. Instead of walking through that door, Arsenal hesitated. And this is not just about one game at the City ground. It connects directly to the earlier draw against Liverpool and to the messaging we heard afterward from Mikel Arteta. Together, they point to a deeper issue. Arsenal are starting to look like a team that waits for opportunities instead of ruthlessly taking them. When City lost the derby, Arsenal could have stretched their lead into something psychologically damaging for their rivals. Instead, they dropped points again against a side they must be beating if they truly want to be champions. Arteta spoke about taking a step forward, even if it was a smaller step than expected, but that framing simply is not good enough at this stage of the season. Deep down, even he knows it. What is really happening is a subtle but dangerous mental shift. Arsenal have gone from being the hunters to being the hunted, and they have not yet adjusted their mindset accordingly. When you are chasing, every match feels urgent, every moment matters, and there is desperation in your play. When you are leading the table, especially with a cushion, the thinking changes. You start believing that avoiding defeat is enough, and that mentality was visible against Nottingham Forest. The team selection reflected it. Resting Bukayo Saka in mid-January during the most decisive stretch of the season raised serious questions. Rotation is understandable, but rotation without prioritization is risky. Managing minutes is important, but managing them for what exactly? A Champions League tie means little if the league title slips away again. History shows that the true champions identify must-win moments and go all in. Manchester City do it. Peak-era Liverpool did it. Arsenal, right now, are trying to compete everywhere and risking winning nowhere. On the pitch, Arsenal created chances, but the key issue is the type of chances they are creating. There is a massive difference between half chances and chances that feel inevitable. Too often Arsenal manufacture opportunities that require perfection rather than forcing situations where goals are almost guaranteed. Goalkeepers are being tested, but not broken. Victor Gyökeres, so influential days earlier, could not find the decisive moment. Gabriel Jesus came close, but close is not enough at this level. Champions do not rely on fine margins. They create inevitability. The most telling statistic of all was that Forest failed to register a single shot on target, yet Arsenal still could not score. That is not misfortune, it is a structural problem in breaking down low blocks. The controversial handball incident involving Ola Aina added fuel to the frustration, and Arteta's anger was understandable, but this moment also revealed something else. Officiating decisions and VAR debates are becoming a mental crutch. Every contentious call becomes part of the narrative, and gradually, that seeps into the squad's psyche. Champions do not need penalties to beat teams like Nottingham Forest, they score from open play and move on. The fact that Arsenal are even leaning on these moments shows how narrow their margins have become. Another uncomfortable truth is that squad depth, once viewed as Arsenal's biggest strength, is starting to work against them. Too many options can disrupt rhythm, cohesion, and clarity. Arsenal's best performances this season came when the team was settled, when relationships were consistent, and roles were clear. Constant chopping and changing risks turning strength into confusion. At some point, Arteta must identify his best 11, not just on talent but on chemistry, and trust them repeatedly. Otherwise, Arsenal risk becoming a familiar version of themselves, the team that fades under pressure just as the finish line comes into view. The questions facing Arteta now are unavoidable. Will the Premier League be prioritized above everything else? What is the true best 11, and will he commit to it? How will Arsenal fix a finishing issue that is clearly systemic rather than individual? And perhaps most importantly, can this team handle the weight of being favorites? Right now, the signs are worrying. The league table may still look healthy, but context matters. Rivals have games in hand, momentum shifts quickly, and seasons are remembered not for control but for courage. Arsenal still have everything in their hands, but belief alone will not carry them over the line. The excuses are stacking up, the margins are shrinking, and dominance without ruthlessness is meaningless. This Forest draw was revealing. It showed a team comfortable controlling matches, but not finishing them, leading the league, but not yet behaving like champions. Manchester City handed Arsenal an opportunity, and Arsenal let it pass. The question now is how many more chances will come, and when they do, will Arsenal finally take them, or will this season be remembered as another painful near-miss where the warning signs were there for everyone to see? Here is a fresh, fully reworked paraphrase that is longer, smoother, and written as one continuous narrative, properly punctuated and optimized for YouTube watch time and engagement, with no page or line breaks. There is a recurring pattern forming at Arsenal that is becoming impossible to ignore, and if it is not confronted head-on right now, it could ultimately define how this entire season is remembered. Sometimes the most dangerous situation in football is not losing outright, but convincing yourself that you are progressing while actually remaining stuck in the same place. Arsenal's goalless draw against Nottingham Forest was not just another frustrating afternoon, it was a flashing warning sign. Once again, Arsenal controlled possession, dominated territory, and limited the opposition to virtually nothing going forward, yet still failed to take all 3 points. What makes this result especially damaging is the context surrounding it. Manchester City had just dropped points, handing Arsenal a golden opportunity to tighten their grip on the title race. These moments do not come often, and when they do, champions take them without hesitation. Arsenal did not, and that is the real concern. This is no longer about one isolated match at the City ground. It is part of a growing trend that also includes the stalemate against Liverpool in the language used by Mikel Arteta afterward. Together, these moments suggest that Arsenal are slowly turning into a team that waits for success instead of aggressively forcing it. When City slipped up, Arsenal had the chance to stretch their advantage into something psychologically decisive, the kind of lead that makes rivals doubt themselves. Instead, they dropped points for the second time in a short span against a team they must beat if they truly want to call themselves title winners. Arteta spoke about making progress, about taking a step forward even if it was smaller than hoped, but at this level of competition, that mindset is simply not sufficient. There comes a point in a title race where steps are not enough, you need leaps. What appears to be happening is a subtle but dangerous shift in mentality. Arsenal are no longer chasing from behind, they are being chased, and the change carries a heavy psychological weight. When you are hunting, every game feels like a final, every moment is played with urgency and hunger. When you are leading, the instinct to protect what you have can quietly creep in. Suddenly, not losing feels acceptable. That mindset was visible against Nottingham Forest. The team selection raised eyebrows, with key players rotated during what is arguably the most decisive period of the season. Rotation has its place, but timing is everything. Managing minutes makes sense, but managing them at the expense of momentum and sharpness is a dangerous gamble. The reality is simple. Domestic titles define legacies. European runs are remembered fondly, but league titles are what history records. Arsenal cannot afford to spread themselves too thin and lose focus on the one prize that has eluded them for over 2 decades. History shows that serial winners do not hesitate during crunch time. Manchester City rarely do. Liverpool at their peak did not. They identified decisive matches and fielded their strongest teams, trusting rhythm and continuity over caution. On the pitch, Arsenal once again created chances, but this brings us to another uncomfortable truth. Not all chances are equal. There is a clear difference between opportunities that look promising and opportunities that feel inevitable. Arsenal are producing moments where a goal is possible, but not situations where a goal feels unavoidable. The ball reaches good areas, but not devastating ones. Goalkeepers are tested, but rarely overwhelmed. That distinction matters. Victor Gyökeres, who had looked sharp days earlier, struggled to impose himself. Gabriel Jesus came agonizingly close, but football at the highest level does not reward almost. Champions do not rely on narrow margins or hope that things fall their way. They create scenarios where scoring is the natural outcome. The most revealing statistic of the entire match is this. Nottingham Forest did not register a single shot on target. Arsenal controlled the game from start to finish and still failed to score. That is not bad luck. That points to a deeper structural issue in how Arsenal dismantle compact defenses. The controversial handball incident involving Ola Aina added another layer of frustration, and while Arteta's anger was understandable, it also highlighted a growing psychological burden. Officiating decisions and VAR debates are becoming part of the story too often. When every dropped point is followed by a refereeing discussion, it subtly shifts accountability. It creates an emotional safety net. Champions do not wait for penalties to beat teams sitting deep. They score from open play and move on. The fact that these moments are becoming focal points tells us just how tight Arsenal's margins have become. Another issue that deserves honest discussion is squad depth. What was supposed to be Arsenal's biggest advantage is now threatening to undermine their rhythm. Depth is valuable, but overuse of rotation can disrupt chemistry and understanding. Arsenal's strongest performances this season came when the